11, the book of Ecclesiastes. I'll be reading tonight while I'm teaching from a copy of the scriptures that I have that does not have verse breaks. And so I'm not going to immediately know what verse I'm in. If you're asking a question, you can give me the verse. I have my Bible open that is divided by verses, so I'll be able to find it and reference it. But I'm reading this because I think this actually helps see the point. So it begins, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what disaster may happen on earth. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth. If a tree falls to the south or the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap." All right, what is this all about? If anyone tells you that they know exactly what "cast your bread upon the waters" means, they're not being honest. I have consulted countless scholars and get as many explanations for this when they break it down verse by verse as there are people commenting about it. One of the ones that does seem to make a little bit of sense is that the bread there, that word is actually representing the seed that you eventually develop into bread. And that in places during the time in the part of the world where this comes from, what the sowing practices were, and the best place I can illustrate this is actually in Egypt, which is not where they were at, but same general region of the world. The Nile River in the early spring would flood. And don't think of floods the way that we generally think of floods, where we have lots of water washing things away and a bunch of destruction, but think of floods in the sense of this amount of water that comes that overflows the banks of the river. And then after a period of time, however many days or weeks it takes, that water actually goes away. It's absorbed into the ground, and it returns and recedes back into the... And what it does is it leaves behind a lot of deposits, a lot of silt and stuff that actually made the land very fertile. And the reason why the Nile River Valley Delta is so fertile and grows crops is because of that process, that yearly flooding that takes place. Their life depended upon that. Now, what scholars have suggested is that what they would do is actually sow their seed while that water was still there. The water slowly receded, deposited its silt, buried the seed in this very rich silt that had moisture in it. You killed two birds with one stone. You soaked your seeds and planted them simultaneously. They would sprout up and grow, and then you would have a fertile crop. Seems reasonable. Have no idea if that's what's being described. There's a lot of other things that people have suggested. Some people take it very literally, and it thinks that it means if you throw your bread on the water that eventually it's going to come back to you, and they make application of this and say if you do something good, then eventually you're going to benefit from it. I don't really think that's the point either. What I believe is that we have to look at all this together, and we have to look at it in the context of chapter 10 as well. So you got to keep in mind that back here in chapter 10, he has warned us that sloth, not working, not doing anything, that's problems. That leads to destruction. So, cast your bread upon the waters, I understand it generally to be an idiom that just says, do something, be at work. You're going to eventually benefit from the work that you do. If the sowing explanation of this is the right one, that's fine. There's some language a little bit later that uses that same imagery, and it fits perfectly with the point that's being made. The next phrase, or the next couplet, "Give a portion to 7 or to 8, for you know not what disaster may happen on the earth." There's far too many people that are so worried about tomorrow and next week and next year that they don't do anything with what they have today. Because if I use it today, then I may not have anything later. And what he's suggesting is don't be so scared of later that you sit here and do nothing. Cast your bread upon the waters, you'll find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 or to 8 because you don't know what's going to happen on the earth. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth. They empty themselves. They don't just drop a little bit of rain and keep a bunch of store. No, they empty themselves on the earth. So what should we be about the business of doing? We should be about the business of sowing and reaping, of working, of engaging, of going out and harvesting, of investing ourselves, of investing our time, investing the things that we possess, using things in this life, because we don't even know if there's going to be a tomorrow. If the tree falls to the south or the north, the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. There's things that we don't have any control over. Things that happen. We don't have any control over them. If we allow our concern and our worry about these things to handcuff us, then we sit around and do nothing. Who do we become? In the parable of the talents, who do we become? Are we the 5-talent man who goes out and puts to work with what's been entrusted to us and bring back 5 more talents? Or are we the 2-talent man who puts to work what's been entrusted to us and bring back 2 more talents? Or are we the 1-talent man who's afraid and buries it in the ground and does nothing? And then thinks we've done something good when we say, see, we didn't lose it. You have what's yours. He said, don't do that. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. If you don't sow your seed unless the conditions are perfect, you'll never bring in a crop. And that's what a lot of people do. They sit around in life and they wait and they say, well, I'm not sure what will happen, so I'm not going to do this. I'm not sure what it's going to do. That may be wasteful. It may not accomplish anything, so I'm not going to do anything. If you never sow the seed, I'll guarantee you're not going to have a crop. And so if you're waiting around to see the perfect weather conditions to say, all right, this is the time to sow, if that's what you're waiting for, you're never going to put your seed in the ground because it's never going to happen. You're never going to see the perfect circumstances. Things are never going to be perfect. Married couples who wait until they can afford babies never have babies. You can't afford them. Ask David. You can't afford them. You're never going to be able to afford them. They're always going to upset your life. They're always going to make things different. They're always going to... It's never going to be the perfect time. It's never going to be the perfect time to talk to your neighbor about God either. It's never going to be the perfect time. If we're waiting for the perfect conditions before we talk to the people in this community about salvation, we'll never talk to them. We will be the 1-talent man who is sitting there doing nothing. And when the Lord returns, we'll say, see, you have what is yours. And he'll say, but that's not what I asked. I told you to cast your bread on the waters. I told you to put the seed out there. I told you to give a portion to 7 or to 8. I told you that the clouds don't hold their water, that they rain it on the earth, and so use what you have. Don't be slothful. That's what he just talked about, right, in chapter 10, the consequences of being slothful. Now he's saying you need to be active. You need to be engaged. Do we know what's going to happen tomorrow? Can we control what's going to happen tomorrow? What good does it do to worry about it? As you do not know the way the Spirit comes to the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work that of God who makes everything. Listen, this one is very powerful. It's really simple. How many of you know how life enters the child in a womb? How does it become a living person? How does God do that? Just like you don't know that, you don't know what else God is doing. And you don't know how He's doing it. So if He says, behold, the fields are white unto harvest, I need more harvesters in the field to sit around saying, well, I'm waiting until everything's perfect, and then I'll go harvest. He says, no, you don't know what's going on. Go out there and do what I told you to do. In the morning sow your seed, and at evening withhold not your hand. For you do not know which will prosper, this or that, whether both alike will be good. Light is sweet, it's pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. So if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. But let him remember that the days of darkness will be many. All that comes is vanity. Listen, if things are going well and you are prospering and life is good, enjoy it. Look at the sun. Enjoy the sunrise. Enjoy the beauty. Enjoy the good things. But he says, understand that if you live long enough, I can promise you dark days are coming. Hard times are coming. In fact, he says, they will be many. And life itself on the earth, all that comes is vanity. Remember that we're seeking the answer to this desire that God has placed in our hearts. That's where he started at the very beginning in chapter 1, that God has placed this desire to understand in our heart. We're looking for that answer, and what he has finally come to the conclusion of is that everything that happens on this earth, it's not about that. That's not what life's about. There are going to be good days, there are going to be bad days, there are going to be things you can control and things that you can't control. You're going to have prosperity, you're going to have adversity. There's lots of things that are going to happen. There's lots of things that you're going to see. And none of them are the answer to the question. I heard it put this way by one gospel preacher that I heard preaching one time. He said, go home this afternoon. He was preaching on a Sunday morning. He said, go home this afternoon and walk through your house. And look at all of those things that you hold so precious to you. All the things of great value that you have. All the things that you are seeking to protect. All the pictures that are so important to you. And realize that none of it matters because it all stays here when you leave the earth. Anything that is connected to the material world, anything that only exists in time, that's not why you're alive. That's what you experience while you're alive, but that's not why you are alive. God did not make us to pursue money. He didn't make us to have a good time. He didn't make us to suffer. He didn't make us to be strong or to be weak. He didn't create man for these things. He created the world to provide an existence for man and a testing ground to see if we could learn that the things that we see with our eyes are not what's important. Rejoice, O young men, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart in the sight of your eyes. That's a simple way of saying, look, it's great. Live life. Enjoy it. Enjoy the sights. Enjoy the sounds. Enjoy what happens. But then listen to what he says. But, there's that word again. I always say, nothing good comes after the word but. But know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. Whatever you see and you delight in, whatever you enjoy, whatever you use your life for, he says, go ahead and do what you want to do, but know that the judgment is coming. Live. We don't need to be in despair. We don't need to be frustrated. Sometimes we're going to have great rulers, and sometimes we're going to have terrible rulers. Sometimes we're going to get promotions, and sometimes we're going to get no promotion. Sometimes we're going to be healthy, and sometimes we're going to be sick. Some of those things we can influence, and some of those things we can't. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Before you make any decision about how you are going to live, start with understanding that the choices you make are the basis of your judgment. Is this a good idea? Is this something I should do? He's saying, begin remembering that decision is going to be part of the review as to the kind of person that you are and what you've learned. Whether or not we'll use David as an example. Whether or not you're a person after God's own heart, or whether or not you're not a person after God's own heart. Did David always make the right choices? No. Did David always remember that judgment followed the choices that he made? Yes. And so when he made the wrong choices, what did he do? He repented and sought God's forgiveness. Because he was well aware of the fact that judgment would come. Remove vexation from your heart and put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. All he is saying there is that earthly life is not the most important thing. What is the whole duty of man? In one sentence he says, it's not earthly life. That's not the whole duty of man. Youth and the dawn of life are vanity. We tend to major in material things. We tend to think those are the most important things. And this man who has applied his heart through his wisdom to know has come to the conclusion that all of those things that we think are so important aren't all that important. And I've talked to a lot of people, by the way, who have been confronted by their mortality. Some men who were gospel preachers, faithful gospel preachers for years, who had massive heart attacks and had 4 or 5 or 6 bypasses. And when they woke up, were told basically, you probably shouldn't still be alive. And you know what they tell me? That it forever changes the way you look at things. The things that you value change. Why? Why does coming face to face with your own mortality change the way you value things? I'm going to tell you why, because you realize you don't have any control over it, and it's fleeting, and it can be gone in a moment. A good friend of mine went to bed Friday night, and he didn't wake up Saturday morning. That may happen to me tonight. And if all my time has been invested in material things, where will I be? So I need to not be slothful. I need to be active in pursuit of the right knowledge, of the right wisdom, or understanding, and of the wisdom that comes with those things, so that I understand where to truly place value. Remember, now keep in mind he's using youth as an illustration here. Remove vexation from your heart, put away pain from your body, for youth in the dawn of life or vanity. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, to which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Took me a long time before I understood the end of that statement. But I have a lot of friends, by the way, I have a lot of them that have died over the last year, that were well into their 90s, who all said to me, I don't even know why I'm still here. They took no pleasure in life. I have nothing left to do. Most of them, their spouse had already passed on. Their children were grown. Their grandchildren were grown. Their great-grandchildren were almost grown. There's a time coming, if you live long enough under this, on this earth under the sun, there's a time coming where you will not go, oh, good, I have another day. You'll go, oh, here we go again. And you won't take pleasure in that day. The evil days come, the years draw near, which you will say, I have no pleasure in them, before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened and the clouds return after the rain, and the day when the keepers of the house tremble and the strong men are bent and the grinders cease because they are few, and those who look through windows are dimmed and the doors on the street are shut. When the sound of the grinding is low and one rises up to the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of the song are brought low, they are afraid also of what is high, and terrors are in the way. These are all illustrations and discussions about losing your strength and your vitality and your influence and your power. All of these things that he's been talking about that people are searching for and trying to lay hold of, that he's already determined are vanity, he's saying, listen, you're going to not be young forever, and even if you attain those things, guess what happens when you get old? You lose it all. And you're going to find out, wait a minute, that wasn't something lasting. That was something fleeting. That was striving after the wind. That was a waste of my life. Problem is, he says, remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Don't get to that point before you realize it. And you've spent your life pursuing the wrong things. Learn something now. I got to stop. I think that was the second bell. Yes, sir. Now, I got to tell you, I got the invitation tonight, so remember everything we talked about in here, because I'm going to talk about the other side of the coin in just a few minutes.